Hello everyone, this video is part of my Jeep towing series where I'm documenting real-world performance pulling a relatively heavy camper, my new Camp Tab 360. It might not be the flashiest video, but it's an important one if you're considering towing with a Jeep Wrangler. I've sent oil, transmission, and differential fluid samples to Blackstone Labs for analysis, and I'll share those results by the end of the series. You'll get a comprehensive real-world review of Jeep's towing capabilities across different terrains and conditions. Do you want to learn a simple, no-cost fix to reduce ton weight on your camper? Check out the video linked above and in description below. And don't forget to subscribe. A lot of great videos coming in future. And your support means a lot and keeps me motivated. In today's video, I'll cover my Jeep's towing setup and why it matters. Plus, how to maximize your Jeep's capacity and stay safe. And in the next video, part 2, we'll dive into the real-world data I've tracked on the Jeep's performance. I've tracked speed, RPMs, gears, coolant temperature, oil temperature, transmission temperature, oil pressure, and more. So you'll get hard data, not just impressions. We'll cover flat highway towing from Rockville, Maryland to Atlantic Ocean, 3-hour trips. Over 3,000 miles across the Blue Ridge Mountains on my quest to conquer all the Southeast Jeep Badge of Honor trails. I've linked my videos for this trip above and below in the description. A month-long adventure towing from the East Coast across Yellowstone, Grand Teton, Wyoming, and deep into the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. I've also linked my videos for my month-long journey to Colorado above and below in the description. This is towing across every kind of terrain, from rolling hills to steep mountain passes. Stick around to see how the Jeep handled each scenario, and subscribe so you don't miss the full series with lab results, long-haul insights, and an honest look at what your Jeep can really do. Okay, let's get started on my setup. Here it is. I did a ton of research using Jeep service manuals, engineering documents, industry publications, looking at various interviews with Jeep engineers on towing, meeting notes from the IIH, and so forth and so on. So I think it's important to lay out the foundation because this isn't just about my Jeep. The things we'll cover here are useful whether you're looking at a Wrangler, Gladiator, or really any vehicle you plan to tow with. It comes down to understanding how the key components, engine, cooling, gearing, design choices affect towing performance and safety. So let's talk about my personal goals. My personal goals were to get an off-road vehicle that's as capable as possible on the trails, but also a setup with the intent of towing. I was really focused on the new Camp Tab 360, which has a perfect layout and comfort for longer trips. So this video is all about how these engineering decisions matter when you're pulling something like this. Here's my setup for towing the new Camp Tab 360, just over 3,000 pounds. When I looked at this setup, I broke it down first into 4 key factors. One was safety. Could I tow it with confidence without white-knuckling the wheel? 2. Spec. Was I still within Jeep's official tow rating? 3. Damage. Would this setup wear out the engine, transmission, and other systems like cooling system too quickly? 4. What it felt like and my expectations. And this is a big one. How did it actually feel? I learned this lesson a while ago. My old Honda, it always felt like it was begging me to turn around halfway up the mountain. But you know what? It still got me to every single national park I wanted to visit. Now compare that to my buddy's Explorer. It felt like a champ when you put your foot down. But then it would break down just when you were feeling good. It's like, surprise, hope you like waiting for a tow truck. Now, I'm not saying Jeep is the most reliable vehicle by itself, but I got it with that understanding and it was perfect with what I wanted to do. As far as towing goes, I had to set my expectations. It was never going to feel like a 1-ton truck pulling this trailer. The first item on my setup is the 3.6-liter Pentastar engine. So why did I choose this? When Jeep was designing the Gladiator, the goal was clear. Make it the truck platform with the best in-class towing, over 7,000 pounds. Naturally, they looked at the 3.6-liter Pentastar as the answer. Pete Milo, Jeep's chief engineer, explained that the single biggest challenge in the Gladiator project was managing heat under towing. They wanted to make the 2.0-liter turbo their flagship option, and they tried everything to make it work. At one point, they even experimented with a hood scoop under the bottom of the grille just to pull more airflow through the radiator. But in the end, they couldn't keep the turbo setup cool enough for the loads Jeep wanted. And that's why the Gladiator and my Jeep Wrangler Rubicon X stick with the 3.6 liter. It's the engine that could handle the heat. On paper, the 4-cylinder turbo feels stronger. It makes more torque, and at altitude in the mountains, thanks to the boost, it does great. But towing is different. The 3.6 spreads the load across 6 cylinders instead of 4. Bigger displacement, lower cylinder pressures, it runs cooler and steadier pulling long grades. Here's a simple way to look at it. 6 bigger cylinders mean each stroke carries less stress and makes less heat. 4 smaller boosted cylinders push harder every time, and that extra pressure shows up as more heat under sustained towing. So when you see Jeep stick with the 3.6 liter for the Gladiator, this is why. It's not about feeling quicker. It's about running cooler and more consistent when you're towing. And that's exactly what I want in my own Wranglers Rubicon X setup. So why did I go with 4.88 gears? First, 4.88 is numerically higher ratio. That means the engine has to spin more times for each turn of the wheels. The benefit is greater torque multiplication, more torque, stronger acceleration, and more pulling power when towing. Second, while on flat ground with no trailer, my gears will spin the engine faster and maybe a bit hotter and burn more fuel. But the real advantage shows up when towing or climbing. That's where the transmission becomes the biggest heat factor. With taller gears like 410s, the engine tends to lug and the torque converter slips more. And that's when fluid temperatures really spike. With 4.88s, the engine runs a little faster, but the transmission stays locked in gear more often. That keeps both transmission and engine oil temps more stable on long climbs and under heavy load like towing. Now here's where it gets weird. In 2024, Jeep upgraded Rubicon to a full floating rear axle. A huge change. That's what finally allowed Jeep to bump the Rubicon's tow rating up from 3,500 pounds to 5,000 pounds. So the base Rubicon with 410 gears and 33-inch tires has a 5,000 pound rating for towing. But the moment you check the box for the 4.8 gears upgrade, even with the exact same 33s, Jeep drops the tow rating right back to 3,500 pounds. That's not because the Jeep can't handle it. It's because of certification. Running the official SAE tow test on another configuration costs time, money, and resources. And for the tiny percentage of Rubicon buyers who choose 4.88s, Jeep just doesn't spend the money to certify it. So on paper, you get 3,500 pounds. In the real world, it's more capable. And if you don't believe me that transmission and gearing are the biggest factors, just look at Jeep's own specs. The Gladiator Sport with 3.7 gears and a different transmission is rated for only 4,000 pounds. And if you change the transmission to what I have, the ZF850RE, the rating jumps to 6,000 pounds. And again, changing the gears from 3.73 to 410s changes it again to the rating of 7,700 pounds. Now, in my case, I did go with the 35-inch tires for off-roading. But again, the 4.88s perform much better for that application as well. But there are negatives just like anything else. You lose a little comfort, you get more noise on the highway, but for towing and off-road, you end up with a much more solid, confidence-inspiring setup. Let's look at the next part of my setup, the full floating axle, which became standard on all Rubicons starting in 2024. In the past, Jeeps used semi-float axles, like the one you see on the left. The problem with the semi-float is that the axle shaft has to do two jobs. It carries the weight of the Jeep, and it has to turn the wheels. That limits how much weight the axle can safely handle. With the full float, which is what you see on the right, the hub and bearings carry all the vehicle's weight, and the axle shaft's only job is to deliver torque to the wheels. The result? A much higher weight capacity, and that translates directly into a higher tow rating. This axle upgrade is actually the biggest factor in allowing Jeep to increase the Rubicon's towing capacity up for the very first time in 2024. The final item on my setup is changing the rear springs. This is actually the only towing upgrade I did myself, not something that came from the factory. I looked at all the options, airbags, a weight distribution hitch, different suspension setups. I ruled out airbags because they take the load off the springs, which isn't how Jeep designed the suspension to work, and that can create stress on the frame and other components. I also decided against the weight distribution hitch. Yes, it redistributes ton weight, but it doesn't reduce overall weight, and it puts a lot of leverage and stress on the frame. Now, that's not to say those aren't the right solutions for somebody else, but for me, the best compromise was to upgrade the rear springs. I installed the Old Man Emu 3138 coils, which are much stiffer than stock. The factory Rubicon coils are about 174 pounds per inch, while the OMEs are closer to 225 pounds per inch. Put simply, the stock coils compress 1 inch for every 174 pounds of weight, while the OMEs take 225 pounds to move the same inch. That extra stiffness means the Jeep squats less when I hook up the Tab 360, and it really helps control sway and bounce on the highway. And I've tested this in real world conditions. On my month-long trip from East Coast to Rockies, including high winds on the Trail Ridge Road, at over 11,000 feet, I had no issues with sway or control. The Jeep felt planted the whole way. My trailer, different story. I lost a couple of trim pieces off the Tab 360, but that's a whole other video. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Why not do the front springs and shocks too, or match the shocks to coils? And you're right, that would be ideal. But here's the reality. Ton weight and towing loads hit the back the hardest. But upgrading just the rears, I get about 80% of the benefit, way less sag, way more stability, without the cost of a full suspension package. And after almost 2 years, I honestly have no complaints with the ride. Without the trailer, it is a little firmer. But when I asked my girlfriend if she noticed the ride was less smooth, she said no. For us, it's been a non-issue. So for now, I went with the cost-effective choice, stiffer rears that limit sag and sway. Down the road, I may add shocks tuned to those springs for more comfort. But as it stands, this setup already makes a big difference. Okay, that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll cover the data I've tracked on temps, RPMs, and performance. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. See you in the next one.